From the very beginning, Putin was never interested in conquering Ukraine. That's a myth, that's a lie. He was interested in liberating the Russians in eastern Ukraine who were being oppressed by the Ukrainian government. That's what he was interested in doing. And he wasn't even going to stay in those regions until it was made clear to him by the population, well, if you come in here and you improve things and fix things for us, as soon as you leave, the Ukrainian secret police will show up and shoot us all through the head. You can't leave, you need to stay. Okay, he made the decision. Fine, we'll stay. Those areas are historic Russian anyway, and at each point in time he has held back in the search for negotiations. The big news that no one in Washington seems to get is that there's no longer any willingness to negotiate with us. That's over, it's done. This war will be settled on terms that suit Moscow. Whatever we want, whatever we think, is irrelevant. And in that connection he's made it clear, since you have no strategy, you have no coherent approach to anything, no willingness to negotiate was ever there, then don't think that you can fall back on the nuclear threat, because if you do, you are consigning yourselves and your country to destruction. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, a highly respected military strategist, has often emphasized the importance of patience and strategic foresight in warfare. His insights are particularly relevant today as we dive into the latest developments in Ukraine conflict. Welcome to today's report. It's another significant day full of updates and insightful analysis about the ongoing war in Ukraine. With each passing day, the situation becomes more tense and complex. As Russia and Ukraine continue to adapt their strategies, it's becoming clear that this conflict is evolving far beyond its initial phases, turning into a war of attrition and calculation. In today's coverage, we'll dive deep into the latest developments on the battlefield and unravel the shifting strategies both sides are adopting. This isn't just about frontline advances anymore, it's about logistics, political leverage, and long-term positioning. Toward the end of this broadcast, we'll explore expert insights into the covert state agenda aiming to push global domination further. But first, let's delve into the specifics of the situation in Kherson. Kherson, a pivotal front that could determine the future course of this war. As Colonel Douglas Macgregor has consistently warned, overstretching forces on the battlefield without securing supply lines can lead to strategic failure. His insights are becoming increasingly relevant as we observe Ukraine's precarious situation in Kherson and the Donetsk front. Significant moves have taken place that are slowly reshaping control over key territories. According to a battlefield map released by Ukraine's deep state channel, Russian forces have successfully taken control of the majority of Ukraine. This small city, though not as globally recognized as others, holds considerable strategic value. What remains under Ukrainian control is just a small portion in the northwestern area, which is still classified as a gray zone. In contrast, Russian officials assert they have full command over the entire city, which could potentially allow them to launch deeper offenses into Ukrainian-held territory. Securing Ukraine's Kherson is no small achievement for Russian forces, as it has been one of the most fiercely contested areas in recent months. This victory opens a gateway to further operations in the region, likely setting the stage for the encirclement of other key Ukrainian positions. Simultaneously, Russian troops have made significant advances in the southern sector of Svatova, effectively cutting off access to the strategically important area of Tustin. Tustin's loss would have serious ramifications for Ukrainian defensive logistics. This isn't just a tactical gain, it disrupts the supply chain that is crucial to Ukraine's war effort. The precarious situation between Svatove and Kurakove further adds to Ukraine's troubles. Should Russian forces maintain their momentum and push deeper into Kurakove, they would threaten the entire southeastern flank of Pokrovsk, a key position that Ukraine cannot afford to lose. The encirclement strategy here, slowly being executed by Russian forces, puts immense pressure on the Ukrainian defenders. Encirclement means limited access to supplies, medical support, and reinforcements, trapping Ukrainian forces in what could become a devastating pocket of destruction. The loss of any significant town in this region would not only hurt Ukraine's defense, but would also provide Russia with much-needed leverage in future negotiations. But as we shift our focus to Kursk, it becomes clear that this region may very well be the pivot point in determining the broader strategic direction of the war, with potential consequences that could ripple across multiple fronts. Colonel Douglas Macgregor has highlighted that in modern warfare, control of logistics is paramount. His words resonate strongly in the ongoing battle for KK, where logistical lines are playing a decisive role. In KK, all eyes are on the fierce battle for Lufka, a village that has now become the focal point of intense fighting. The Ukrainian defenses, stretched thin across multiple fronts, are struggling to maintain their hold in the face of mounting Russian pressure. Orano, a widely regarded news source in the region, reported that Russian forces have not only managed to gain a foothold in Lufka, but are now in control of significant portions of the village. This gain is more than just a symbolic victory for Russia, it's a crucial step in their broader strategy to weaken Ukraine's defensive network in Kiev. The Ministry of Defense in Moscow has confirmed they've also retaken control of Yanova and Bory, two settlements that are strategically located near Saja, the epicenter of Ukraine's cross-border incursions into Russia. The significance of Yanova's recapture cannot be overstated. Located just 24 kilometers west of Saja, this village offers Russian forces a critical vantage point for controlling the logistical routes from Ukraine's Sumy region. These routes serve as vital arteries for the supply of ammunition, food, and reinforcements to Ukrainian troops stationed along the front lines. By severing this lifeline, Russia is methodically cutting off Ukraine's ability to sustain a prolonged defense in the region. Yanova is more than just a village, it is a strategic fulcrum that could dictate the flow of the war in Kursk. These tactical victories in Kursk, while incremental, are part of a much larger calculated effort by Russia to suffocate Ukraine's logistical capabilities and slowly grind down its war machine. Ukraine's position in KK is becoming increasingly vulnerable, a situation that Colonel Douglas Macgregor had long cautioned against when warning of the dangers of overextending military resources. The latest reports from the Financial Times published on September 16 revealed just how dire the situation is. Western analysts have noted that while Russia's counteroffensive in Kursk is gaining momentum, Ukraine has halted the deployment of fresh reserves to the area. This shift signals that Ukrainian forces are struggling not just to hold the ground they've gained, but also to prevent further Russian advances. The inability to deploy additional troops is a critical indicator that Ukraine's offensive capacity is being worn thin. The broader implications of this are profound. Ukraine had hoped that by advancing into Kursk, it could force Moscow to divert resources away from other critical fronts, particularly Donbass. However, this strategy has failed to materialize. Instead of pulling Russian forces away, Ukraine is now facing a situation where Russia has only increased its pressure on key areas inside Ukrainian territory. The rail junction of Pokrovsky, for example, is now under significant threat as Russia's advances continue to push Ukrainian forces further back. In this context, President Zelensky's Kursk campaign is increasingly looking like a gamble that has not paid off. Ukrainian forces find themselves in a no-win situation, unable to advance deeper into Russian-held territory and facing the very real possibility of being encircled or cut off from their supply lines. The geographical and logistical challenges posed by this region mean that retreat is also a difficult proposition. As winter approaches, the situation will become even more precarious for Ukrainian forces. Without natural cover and fresh reinforcements, they will face a steep uphill battle to maintain their position. President Vladimir Putin's approach to the situation, as noted by Colonel Douglas Macgregor, has been one of remarkable patience and strategic calculation. Unlike many Western leaders who expected a swift, overwhelming response to Ukraine's incursions, Putin has instead chosen to play the long game. This has allowed Russia to absorb short-term setbacks in exchange for long-term gains. By allowing Ukrainian forces to overextend themselves, Putin is banking on the fact that their logistical networks will collapse under the weight of Russia's protracted counteroffensive. While Western media and analysts initially believed that Russia would respond with an immediate military escalation, the reality has been far more nuanced. Putin's strategy has been to lure Ukrainian forces into a situation where they cannot sustain their offensives. This is not just about holding on to territory, it's about draining Ukraine's military resources over time. This patient approach is designed to force Ukraine into a position where they have no choice but to retreat or face complete encirclement. Putin's strategic patience is becoming increasingly apparent as he continues to position Russia for a long-term victory, while Ukraine finds itself running out of options. As Colonel Douglas Macgregor has pointed out, the failure to consolidate gains and secure logistical lines can lead to a rapid unraveling of even the most ambitious military campaign. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has now revised its initial plans, acknowledging that the situation is becoming unsustainable. Initially, Ukraine had hoped to make a significant push into Russian-held territories, but officials are now backtracking on these plans. The new focus is on reinforcing flanks and ensuring that their troops can retreat if necessary, should the situation worsen further. This shift in strategy marks a significant turning point in Ukraine's approach to the war, signaling that even their most ambitious offensives are now being tempered by the realities on the ground. In a move that will likely tip the balance further in Russia's favor, Ukraine is now prioritizing the preservation of its forces over aggressive advances. President Putin has authorized an expansion of the Russian armed forces to nearly 2.4 million personnel, with 1.5 million designated as combat troops. This surge in military manpower comes at a time when Ukraine's resources are already stretched thin across multiple fronts. The Ministry of Defense has confirmed that many of these new troops are being deployed to critical areas like KK and D-Base, where they will join ongoing operations to solidify Russia's control. As Russia bolsters its forces and continues its counteroffensive, Ukraine will find itself increasingly outmatched in terms of both manpower and resources. Colonel Douglas Macgregor's insights into the nature of protracted warfare and the importance of strategic patience are clearly visible in the unfolding situation in KK. The West has reason to worry as Russia's counteroffensives gather steam. KE's attempts to break Russian defenses have cost them dearly, not only in soldiers and resources but also in the weakening of other critical fronts. Moreover, KK appears to be transforming into a trap, one that slowly but surely drains Ukraine's strength and diminishes NATO support. As NATO's newest equipment gets funneled into Kursk, it is becoming clear that Ukraine is facing a ticking clock. Russia is biding its time, preparing to strike decisively when Ukraine can no longer sustain its effort. That wraps up our report for today. Stay tuned for more updates and analysis in the coming days. Thank you for watching.